My name is Vanessa Diana. Welcome to my channel. Today we'll be doing something a little different. We're going to call this Bedroom Chronicles, and we're just going to have a little chit chat story time from my bed. Today we're going to talk about my adenomyosis and VBAC story. Yes? So I have two kids. My very first child I had at the young age of 19. And I had her via cesarean. Now, I don't really believe I need a cesarean. My current doctor didn't believe I really needed a cesarean once he went over my chart. But that's another story for another time, I guess. So after the cesarean, I started having uterus issues. My periods were heavier than normal. My cramps intensified, and then where my C-section line was, it always felt like it was pulling from the inside, like pulling the skin, like my uterus was pulling the skin, it felt like, from the inside. So 5 years later, I just had like periods for months straight. When I say like in 1 month period, I might have had 2 or 3 days, no period, right? Crazy. So I went to the doctor. I went to a couple of doctors. The first doctor was just kind of like, oh yeah, you'll need a hysterectomy. You'll need a hysterectomy. That's the only way we could deal with this pain, and kind of like, you know, shush me and move me along. Another doctor I went to, she actually ran a whole bunch of tests. Like I had MRIs, I had CT scans, I had ultrasounds. She tried me with different birth controls. And on one of the results, it said I have suspected adenomyosis. So most women that have like a uterus condition, sometimes they have endometriosis, which like the uterine lining attacks like the bowels, the small intestines, you know, those things. But for me, my uterus was essentially attacking itself, and it was growing into the uterine muscles. So like when I had a cycle every month, instead of my lining shedding and coming out, my lining would, this is kind of gross, but my lining would shed but go into my muscles. So with that, it caused my uterus to become enlarged. They also found a few fibroids in my uterus. So this particular doctor basically told me I needed to try to have another baby and then get my uterus taken out, because that was the only way to get rid of this condition. She said, unless I want to be on pain pills for the rest of my life, that was it. So I was only 25 at the time, and so that wasn't going for me. Like, I was so sad, I was so depressed, I cried all the time. My boyfriend at the time, you know, he didn't know what to do. Like, he would just say, oh, sorry. He was just like, oh, I'm so sorry. But like, what do you do when you're just bleeding uncontrollably for months and months on end, you know? I was taking iron pills, I was trying birth control, I was taking pain pills every day. Like, I was just trying so much stuff to get it to stop. I didn't want a hysterectomy at 25 years old, so I found another doctor. I found a doctor in my area where the whole clinic was VBAC supportive. They didn't really push hysterectomies. That was like a last result. In the state that I'm in, they were like one of the top 5 hospitals or top 5 clinics that did cesarean sections. Like, they had the lowest cesarean section rate, you know? So all those were pros for me to go to that hospital or go to that clinic. My first couple appointments there, you know, they did the ultrasounds, They did multiple ultrasounds. They did them up top of my abdomen, and they did it intravenously. So they counted my fibroids. They seen what the other doctors were saying, but they informed me that until you have a hysterectomy, there's no way to technically diagnose you with adenomyosis. They could just suspect that you have it because of the scans. They can see like the tissues on the scans, and so they can suspect that you have it, but it's not tested and confirmed until you have a hysterectomy. But I told them I didn't want a hysterectomy, and they agreed. They said I was too young. Like, there's no way that they would willingly throw me into menopause if I didn't have to. I didn't want to think about if I had to save my old ovaries or total hysterectomy. Like, I didn't want to do that. I've always wanted like 10 kids, right? I used to always say, oh, I want as many kids as I can afford. But I always wanted about 10 kids. I don't know why, but I've always wanted about 10 kids. A couple of years later, right, I get pregnant. And it was crazy actually how I got pregnant, because I didn't get pregnant our whole entire relationship, like our whole 5-6 year relationship. I wasn't pregnant, you know, and I should have been pregnant, but I wasn't pregnant. So we were actually going through a breakup, and I came by one day, ta-da! Ta-da! I'm pregnant, you know. Sometimes it still makes me giggle when I think about it. But yeah, I got pregnant. You know, we decided to move forward with my pregnancy. First doctor's appointment, they said, hey, it's been 10 years since your cesarean section. Would you like to try for a vaginal birth? And I was like, absolutely. Absolutely, you know. So they gave me a couple of pamphlets on like what is a VBAC, what to expect. But truthfully, let me tell you this. Let me just say this. If you have a cesarean or a vaginal birth, you are still a woman and you are still a mom. Okay? So when I did have my daughter 10 years ago, somebody told me that I wasn't a real woman because I didn't push out my baby. And that always stuck with me in the back of my mind. And so I was always determined that I'm going to have another baby and I'm going to push that baby out. Always determined. Which is ridiculous, you know? Like, it was ridiculous. But I was very determined, basically, to prove that person wrong, which is stupid because I don't have anything else really to prove to anybody else. But at the time, I was like, okay, you said I couldn't do it. You said my body didn't work the first time. Watch, it's going to work this time. So with my clinic, you have to see doctors and you have to see midwives. The doctors are on like the main visits, you know, to make sure, first of all, that you're even eligible for a VBAC, to even try to do a VBAC. But I had midwives and I loved my midwives. They were very warm. They were very supportive. It was like talking to a sister or a mom or aunt, you know, every time. But one of the main things they told me is try not to gain too much weight. They said, try not to gain weight. If you can, try to gain 15 pounds, no more than 20, 15 pounds. I think I gained about 50 pounds. Yeah, so I gained about 50 pounds. Yeah, they're very, very supportive. So I will say, if you want to have a VBAC or you're considering a VBAC, you have to find somewhere that is very, very supportive of vaginal births after cesarean. You have to find somewhere like that, because if not, they're going to push you for a C-section, because it's just easier. Like, you've already been cut open. There's less risk. Just go ahead, cut it open, same scar. Let's do it, you know? But where I went, they were very, very, very supportive of vaginal births after cesareans. And yeah, so the first trimester is like any regular trimester. So you go to your prenatal appointments like once a month. You have to take your prenatal vitamins. They're checking to make sure that the baby's okay, you're okay. A couple of times during my first trimester, I had to go to the hospital because I was bleeding. And I actually thought I was going to lose the baby. Even with that, you know, then they start restricting the things that you can do. I wasn't completely on bed rest, but I was like getting restricted, like pelvic rest, no sex. No sex for a little bit until the bleeding stopped. Second trimester, they're monitoring the baby's growth. They don't want the baby. So one of the reasons they don't want you to gain a whole bunch of weight is because they don't want you to have a big baby. So if you have a C-section scar, you are at risk for a uterine rupture, right? So meaning when the baby's coming out of your birth canal, it can go by your old scar and pop it back open and like pop back open. And the baby can die and you can be in very dangerous conditions. So the second trimester, you have to have a TOLAC appointment, which basically is the same thing. You have to have it with the doctor, and they give you all the statistics, what your percentage is to have a uterine rupture, what your percentage is to have a successful VBAC. You have to sign all these papers saying that that's what you want to do, basically not holding them liable if anything happens, you know, because this is what you decided to do, or me in the case, what I decided to do. That paperwork, I was very determined to have this VBAC. Third trimester, that's when I picked up all the weight. They were like, you need to slow down if you want to try to have VBAC. And I'm like, but everything tastes so good. Like, I was eating like a goosey and fufu. I was eating stuff I didn't eat ever, you know? So I was eating like a goosey and fufu. I was eating watermelon every day. I wanted Chinese food, like anything I could have that was starchy, I wanted it. So third trimester went well, you know. My baby was growing. She started to measure a little bit larger than she was supposed to, you know. She was always like a week or two growth wise. So they measure your belly, you know, and she was always a week or two over what she was supposed to be. So they were like, okay, Vanessa, like, you know, if she keeps getting bigger, we're going to go ahead and talk about C-sections. And I did not want a C-section. I wasn't trying to hear it. Wasn't a thing for me. So I actually ended up scheduling to be induced at 40 weeks. Yeah, I didn't want to. Okay, so my first daughter, we went overdue. I wasn't trying to do that again. So I scheduled an induction. Some people agree with that. Some people don't. For me, that was the way to go. And so I got there Sunday night, and they started an IV, and they put a Foley bulb into my uterus. It's a Foley bulb catheter. So they insert, okay, so it's basically like a inflatable balloon that you make balloon animals out of. It kind of looks like that. So it's a long balloon. They stick it inside you, and they inflate it with saline solution. So the top is like a bulb that sits at the top of your cervix. And then what it's supposed to do is the pressure of the bulb is supposed to help dilate you. It's supposed to fall out on its own after a couple of hours. Some people go home, some people stay inside the hospital. I stayed inside. Some people automatically go into active labor at that point. Some people don't. I had the Foley catheter in from about, I want to say 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. to 10 a.m. and didn't dilate not 1 centimeter bigger than what I was, bigger than I already was. And I was like, okay. So not only is this painful because it's pressure, like it is very hard pressure at the top of your the top of your uterus, pulling down from the inside, trying to get out. But then it didn't even work. Like, I was so frustrated. So then they said, okay, they were going to start me on Pitocin at 11 a.m. But they wanted to start me on Pitocin slowly. Like, they weren't going to give me a high dosage because they kind of wanted my body to labor on its own. So they gave me Pitocin probably like 11:30. Contractions come in. No problem. When I tell you the catheter pain was way worse than the contraction, it was like 10 times worse than the contractions. Well, at this point. So the contractions started and I'm like, okay, whatever, go to sleep. Then I went from like 2 centimeters dilated to 5 centimeters dilated in about an hour and a half. So they were like, oh, we should have a baby before 2 o'clock. Like, the baby should be here, you know? Baby wasn't here. So they were like, okay, let's try it again. Let's up it up a little bit. Dilated some more. I got to about 6 centimeters. It was at 6 p.m. Still no pain medication, 6 centimeters. And I'm just like chilling almost. Like, besides sleeping, when I was awake, I was just kind of like chilling. The contractions felt like tightening of your stomach, like really, 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 really tight, and then it releases. So it kind of like takes your breath away, but I wouldn't say excruciating at this point. So 6 o'clock passes. They thought that my daughter would be here by 6 o'clock. She's not. I get to 7 centimeters, and it's like 9 p.m. So the OB on call, she says, okay, let's go ahead and pop your water. She's like, so I'm gonna order you an epidural because I'm gonna pop your water, and so labor should progress really fast and we should have a baby before midnight. Right? Easy peasy, sounds great. So I got the epidural and I allowed them to pop my water. I was only numbed on my left side. My right side, I still felt everything. The left side, I was numb. Craziest feeling. At that point, you know, when you get an epidural, you can't walk. You can't do anything really. You're paralyzed from the waist down. So you can't walk. You can't go to the bathroom by yourself. You can't do anything. So you have to get a catheter. And I had a whole bunch of IV bags. So for me, I was having a trouble excreting my urine, I guess. So the urine wasn't coming out, but all this IV fluid was going in. So I was literally swelling up. Like, I literally was swelling. And the baby's heart rate kept taking dips, like up 1 minute and down. And it would go beep, 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 beep. And I was getting so scared. And the nurses would have to come in and rotate me, put me on one side and leave me there for like 30 minutes, come back, put me on the other side because I was swelling so much. Like, they had to keep flipping me to make sure it wasn't just going on one side. Okay, 7 centimeters, 8 centimeters. When we hit about 8 centimeters, it's about maybe midnight. And the alarms keep going off because my baby's heart rate keeps dipping. I'm swelling. You know, it's not looking good. And the doctors are like, okay, you know, if it keeps going on like this, we're going to have to do a C-section. And when I tell you, I started crying my eyes out. Like, I don't think I ever cried so hard. Like, I was like, but I'm here, you know, I'm at the finish line. Why? Like, no, we're not doing a C-section. Like, we're not doing that. No, no. So they were like, okay, let's give it some time. 1 o'clock wasn't working. So they come in with all the paperwork for me to sign to authorize for them to give me a C-section. And I am distraught. I am like hysterically crying because I'm still in the back of my head listening to the stupid person that told me I wasn't a real woman if I didn't push out a baby. So I'm like, damn, here we go again. My body's not able to push out a baby. It's failing me, you know? Like, this is what my body was supposed to be made to do, and I'm feeling like a failure. And so I had this one nurse. I really, really liked her. And I was like, I signed all the papers, but I really don't want a C-section. Like, I want that to be the last resort ever. And she was like, okay, I'll see what I can do. She was like, just try to get some rest, see how you feel, see if you progress, and then I'll let the doctor decide what we're going to do. So then 3 o'clock in the morning comes. I'm finally at 9 centimeters. So I'm excited. I'm like, okay, 9 centimeters. We're almost there, yeah? And my body wasn't working. Like, they're like, okay, I think we're going to do a C-section. I was like, no, we're not. We're not. We're not going to do it. And I was like, just give me a little bit more time. You know, if by the morning she's not here, then we can go ahead and do a C-section. They agreed to it. You know, because now, even though they have given their medical advice, I'm still like the patient. And unless it for sure is going to like kill both of us, they kind of have to listen. You know, so I'm like, no, just please, just give me another chance, just please. So they were telling me not to push, not to try to get the baby to come out, just let my body relax and do its own thing. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. So they would leave the hospital, they would leave my room, yeah? And I would lay in the bed and I would push. Like, I would sit there and I'd be like, but I was doing it in a way where nobody really knew what I was doing, because I was like, no, this baby is going to come out one way or other, because they kept saying they could feel her head. She was in proper position. So we're going to push this baby out. And I called the nurse and I said, I think the baby's going to come out. I have to push. I feel like I have to push. Now, mind you, I have already been pushing, right, for like 45 minutes already by myself. Like, fuck this baby's coming out one way or another. It's coming out of here. So I was pushing. I told her, I said, I think this baby has to come out. It's like 5:45 in the morning. And she was like, oh, I feel it. You're at a 10. Okay, let me go get the midwife. But the midwife was delivering the girl in the next room over, because I guess she wanted to have her baby at the same time. So she was like, okay, we'll do some practice pushes until the midwife comes, just so you know how to push correctly. And I was like, okay. So they put me in the stirrups, and then I had people holding my legs on either side. And so you have to like bend your head to your chest and push. Yes. So I practice pushed twice, and she was like, okay, this baby's coming out. She was like, don't push anymore. And I was like, yeah, right. So I was like doing like little pushes on the inside. Literally, the midwife came in and was like, okay. She was like, hi, Vanessa, you ready? And I'm like, I'm ready. It's 6 o'clock at this time. And she was like, push. I pushed and I pushed and I pushed. 15 minutes later, baby was out. Baby was out screaming. And I was so proud of myself and I was so happy. I started crying. Right? And you think that's it? You then have to push the placenta out. So I pushed the placenta out. That was a little gross feeling because it really feels like one big blood clot coming out. I probably should have did the trigger warning before I did this. Yeah, so I pushed the placenta out. The baby came out. She was so cute, you know. She was healthy. I was healthy. Perfect. When you have a C-section, you can't do anything for a couple of days. Like, you can barely move. You're in so much pain. Literally, the baby came out and I was like, okay, I'm ready. Like, I was like, okay, I'm ready to go. I was like, okay, I want to get up and I want to go pee. I want to try to go pee by myself. And they were like, oh, wait, well, you just had an epidural, so your legs aren't really going to work. And I was like, no, I got this. And they were like, oh, okay. So this one nurse was like, let me just help you anyways. So she put my legs down. She put my legs down on the floor and I was like, whoa. I was like, whoa, because my legs weren't stable. So you have to like lock your knees, walk. Well, when I tell you, and they eventually moved me to maternity ward, mother-baby maternity ward. They brought me there. You know, my friends start coming, my family start coming. I feel perfectly fine. I don't even feel like I just had a baby. I feel normal. I'm like, can I go home? I'm ready to go home. I could stand up, I could walk, I took a shower, like perfectly normal, as if I just wasn't in labor for 24 hours or more. Like normal. I was just like sitting up, eating, taking showers, like normal. When I had my C-section, I couldn't do anything. Like, I was so miserable. I couldn't even sit up straight. Like, I couldn't walk. It was just miserable. But this time around, you just need some ice packs, some granny panties, and some pads, and I was completely fine. So I say all that to say I had a successful VBAC, and if you could try for a VBAC, I would recommend it, you know. And if you don't succeed and have one, that's okay, you know. And if you do have one, congrats to you. But do whatever feels good for you. Don't let anybody be in your ear to make you feel less than. Don't let anybody tell you what you should or should not do with your body. Do whatever you feel like. Yeah. I actually think that was a great experience, because it was like the recovery was like night and day. I was fine. I didn't have to take any narcotics. I took maybe equivalent to like 4 Advils the day I was in the hospital. I was in the hospital 24 hours, like recovery. I was in the hospital 24 hours. And then I was like, I'm ready to go home. I want to go home. They were like, but you could stay, you know, another day or two. And I was like, ready to go home. So 24 hours after I had the baby, I was back home. Like, I was home. And even when I was home, it was fine. Like, I had energy. I wasn't really in pain. Nothing. It was a really, really, really great experience. I wouldn't trade it for the world, even with my complications, even with getting scared that I was going to have a C-section, even with the emotional stuff that I went through my pregnancy. I would not trade that experience for anything. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed my little story time from the bed. If you have any questions, feel free to write me, DM me, or just hit me up. My Instagram is Vanessa Deanna1. My Facebook is Vanessa Deanna. My Snapchat is Vanessa Deanna. So if you have, and my TikTok is Vanessa Deanna. So if you have any questions, or just feel free to leave a comment below. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed my story time. Have a great day. Ciao.